Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and it's a pleasure to rise for my first speech of this session. I'd like to take the opportunity to begin by acknowledging the staff in both my riding of Vancouver-Fairview and in my ministry office who assist me so ably and who do such a great job for the people of British Columbia. In my constituency office, my constituency assistants are Lisa DeClear and Sean Phipps. They are keeping things going in Vancouver-Fairview, responding to the needs of constituents, the issues that are raised by constituents while I am here in session, and often when I'm doing ministry business in Vancouver or Victoria. My former constituency assistant and now my executive assistant, Remick Lowe, is filling a very important role ensuring that things run smoothly in Vancouver, that constituents get what they need, and that the office has the oversight that it requires when I'm not present. Here in Victoria, in addition to the many, many employees of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, my deputies, Mark Zacharias, Bobby Plekas, and Kevin Jardine. I'm also assisted on a daily basis by ministerial assistants Kaylee Frampton, my most recent ministerial assistant who just started this week, Evelyn Xia, and administrative assistant Corinne Brosh, as well as a new administrative coordinator, Kirsten Nielsen. So my profound thanks to them. There are many other people who have made this work possible for me and indeed helped me to be both elected and re-elected to this position, and they are too lengthy to name, but to my family, to my close friends who are a sounding board for me, who give me advice, who help me stay calm when events might often lead me to be excitable, I extend my profound appreciation and love. Honourable Speaker, let me begin in addressing this budget speech by responding slightly to the end statements of the member for Kelowna Mission. What the member from Kelowna Mission failed to mention is the reason that the opposition is on the opposition side of the House and that parties representing 58% of BC voters are on this side of the House, bringing forward a very different program, despite the fact that the opposition party briefly tried to emulate it in its final throne speech. Emulated many of the programs, in fact, that they now say we cannot bring in for British Columbians and we cannot afford. Honourable Speaker, during the campaign, during the 4 years I was an MLA, I heard repeatedly from British Columbians in every corner of the province, and particularly in Vancouver-Fairview, that we have a social deficit, that the single-minded focus of the previous government on taking measures to cut taxes for the wealthiest British Columbians, to cut taxes for corporations, ended up transferring responsibility for balancing the budget onto the backs of working families, whether it was BC Hydro rates, ICBC rates, MSP premiums, rising student debt, rising tuition fees, the extremely ill-advised and frankly reprehensible decision to charge tuition fees for English language learning and adult basic education, which threatened to condemn new Canadians and many people who are trying to upgrade their skills to not have the opportunity to reach their full potential and to help build BC's economy and help build our tax base. That's the legacy of the BC Liberal government. That's why we're on this side of the House, and that's why we're trying to bring forward a throne speech, a program of legislation, and a budget that focuses first and foremost on British Columbians, on the people of British Columbia, at the center of our decision-making, at the center of our policies, at the center of our budget-making, trying to deal with issues of affordability for British Columbians. Affordability, Honourable Speaker. People want access to childcare. Women want access to childcare so they can go out and get a job and be part of the workforce. Students, Honorable Speaker, need the best possible opportunity to learn, and they will finally get it, Honorable Speaker, because of this budget that responds to the Supreme Court decision and goes further to ensure that students have access to teachers' time and attention, that students have space, that the next generation of British Columbian students won't face the conditions that Christy Clark, when she was Minister of Education, forced on an entire generation of students going through K-12 over a 16-year period. Honourable Speaker, we're intent on making life more affordable for British Columbians in any number of ways. We're intent on providing British Columbians with the services that they expect from their government, that they deserve from their government, that the economy and the government of British Columbia need to support. So whether it's seniors who need home care, whether it's young parents who need childcare, whether it's young people who need education, whether it's post-secondary students in every corner of British Columbia who want to ensure that they can afford post-secondary education without graduating with a $30,000 debt. Honourable Speaker, these are just some of the ways that we intend to support British Columbians with the services they expect and the services they deserve. And Honourable Speaker, we also intend to focus on building an economy that's diversified, that's modern, that isn't boom and bust, that doesn't focus jobs in only one corner of the province, but that creates good, sustainable, diversified economic development in every corner of British Columbia. And yes, that includes responsible resource development developed under an environmental assessment process that British Columbians can trust, in which they can have faith, in which First Nations find themselves a partner, not a litigant in protest in court case after court case. Honourable Speaker, industry deserves to know what the rules are, that the rules are consistent, that there is an efficient process in which the public and First Nations have trust, in which they know what the conditions they will have to meet will be, and where they can see a pathway to approval instead of a roadmap to social conflict and First Nations litigation. Honourable Speaker, a modern economy in British Columbia depends on not putting all of our eggs in one basket and waiting for them to hatch for over 4 years, but ensuring that we seize the opportunities of a low-carbon economy, of the tech sector in British Columbia, of adding value to resources instead of simply exporting them virtually untouched, and of applying tremendous opportunities of clean technology to help our minerals and mining industry be cleaner, be lower carbon, to ensure that we add value at every step of the process. Honourable Speaker, this budget update, in advance of our first full budget next April, takes critical first steps toward a BC that has predictability, that has stability, that has a modern economy, and that provides services for people when they need it, where they need it, and makes life more affordable. Honourable Speaker, we're cutting MSP premiums in half. It'll save families up to $900 per year, but we're clear over a 4-year period we will eliminate this unfair, essentially flat tax that transferred a progressive tax burden on a flat tax to all British Columbians in a way that was unfair and created great hardship for working families throughout British Columbia. We're supporting small business by lowering the tax rate by 20% from 2.5% to 2%. But Honourable Speaker, one of the very critically important things in our budget update today, because particularly in Metro Vancouver and particularly in Vancouver-Fairview, where I heard over and over and over again before the election, during the election, since the election, where MLAs from all over the province have seen this trend of housing unaffordability spread and impact affordability for people and security for people in every part of the province. We are making strong commitments to affordable housing. Starting with affordable rental housing, this budget update invests $208 million over 4 years to construct more than 1,700 new units of affordable rental housing in communities across British Columbia. Honourable Speaker, that's a strong start, and we will do more. In addition, Honourable Speaker, we're investing $291 million over 2 years to construct 2,000 modular supportive housing units for people who are homeless. Honourable Speaker, homeless, not just people who are struggling to make rent, but people who, when they can no longer make rent, or when they've been rent evicted, or whether they've seen loopholes in the Residential Tenancy Act result in unconscionable rent increases that the opposition, when in government, continuously refused to address. People who, when faced with those kinds of rent increases or evictions, may well find themselves homeless. Honourable Speaker, there is nothing in my view more critical in the actions that we need to take than to ensure that people can rely on stable housing, on affordable housing, and an end to the kind of reckless rent gouging that we have seen under the previous government. Honourable Speaker, I touched on the issue of childcare initially. It is critically important that young families get the support they need so they can earn a living, so that women with young children can upgrade their skills at school, can enter the workforce and develop enhanced skills that comes with being part of the workforce, so they can support their families. We are making a start in this update with $20 million in new childcare investments that we will ensure support more than 4,000 new childcare spaces. And despite what the opposition has said, Honourable Member, this is a start. We are working on details with people on this side of the House, and we will be glad to do it with people on the other side of the House. But we know British Columbians need accessible, affordable childcare, and it will be delivered. Honourable Speaker, healthcare. My colleague, the Minister of Health, reminds me that a huge portion of our budget goes to healthcare every year. We need to ensure that people have the healthcare they need, when they need it, where they need it. We are investing in healthcare. In the case of the priorities of opioids and addiction, there'll be a $603 million increase over 3 years to the base budget for the Ministry of Health. We will be looking at programs that address the fentanyl emergency, and we will then address other pressures in the healthcare system, whether it's urgent care clinics, whether it's community health clinics, whether it's ensuring that we have funding for long-term care and that we assist seniors with the home care they need to stay in their home as long as possible with the care and support they need. Honourable Speaker, it's more humane. It's more humane. It is a respectful way to treat seniors in their twilight years, but it's also more cost-effective in the healthcare system. Honourable Speaker, I have wondered for close to 16 years why this obvious step that is better for everyone and costs the system less in the long run wasn't taken. I look forward to our government introducing the measures that will address this issue. Honourable Speaker, we will take many measures to build a sustainable economy. We will invest in capital infrastructure that is needed throughout the province that will both build strong and sustainable communities, as well as provide jobs in every corner of our province, with $14.6 billion in capital spending over 3 years, whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals, whether it's transit, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's transportation infrastructure, people throughout British Columbia, every corner, every riding, represented by members on both sides of this House, can look forward to seeing a capital plan that supports their communities and their needs. With our colleagues in the Green Party, we will implement an Innovation Commission and an Emerging Economy Task Force. Perhaps I did mean an Emergency Economy Task Force. An Emerging Economy Task Force and an Innovation Commission that will ensure that the 21st century economy, clean technology, applying technological solutions to human health, to resource extraction and development and manufacturing, is not an afterthought, but it's integrated into every aspect of our economy. Honourable Speaker, the member from Kelowna Mission made the claim that there wasn't an economic plan. Honourable Speaker, on the contrary, we have an economic plan. We will be developing it in consultation with communities. We are open to input from every member of this House, from communities, importantly from First Nations with whom we wish to partner. We want to ensure that we're not at the end of the train, on the emerging low-carbon economy, Honourable Speaker, and that's why we will implement a strong climate action plan with clear commitments, with a predictable carbon price increase, carbon tax increase, so that industry can plan, so that people will be spurred to seek, support, and purchase innovative technologies that help them do, whether it's resource extraction, manufacturing, home building, energy, any of these aspects, these important aspects of our economy will be spurred to innovate, and we have a tech sector that's champing at the bit for the opportunity to develop and market technologies here at home and then to export them to the corners of the world that are looking, Honourable Speaker, to not only embrace a low-carbon economy for the future of our children and grandchildren, but to benefit economically from the economy of the future, not to be doomed by an economy of the past that simply does not want to adapt to change. Unlike, Honourable Speaker, the previous government, and unlike the claims of the member from Kelowna Mission and the member from Prince George Valemont, who claim that we're somehow abandoning revenue neutrality, people I talk to in my constituency and across BC, unless they're in the richest 20% of British Columbians, never experienced revenue neutrality, because the bulk of the personal income tax cuts, although they will be retained, benefited the richest British Columbians after the first 2 to 3 years of the carbon tax introduction. And they were burdened, Honourable Speaker, with fees, hidden taxes, costs of living, unrestrained increases in the cost of housing, that yes, we'll talk about that another day, member, burdened by fees that make their lives unaffordable. What British Columbians want, Honourable Speaker, is not a so-called revenue-neutral plan that has a number of boutique tax credits, including tax credits that existed before the carbon tax was ever introduced and being attributed to revenue neutrality. If a tax credit is good for the economy and creates jobs, it should stand on its own, and it will. But we will, Honourable Speaker, unlike the previous government, ensure that 80% of low and moderate income families in BC receive a rebate in advance of paying carbon taxes, and that ultimately 50% of BC families, Honourable Speaker, will be better off with a rising carbon tax and our carbon tax rebate system than they are today, Honourable Speaker, under the frozen carbon tax of the previous government. And we will also invest in green initiatives, transit, the clean economy, and other measures that will make BC a leader again in fighting climate change. Honourable Speaker, it's an honour to speak to this budget update. It is, of course, an honour to be on this side of the House, and one that I do not take lightly. It's one that I welcome, I and my colleagues welcome. We look forward to responding to the needs of British Columbians, the desire of British Columbians to have the services they want, the desire of British Columbians for a more affordable future, the desire of British Columbians for a clean, innovative, modern economy where they're not asked to choose between the environment and a job, but where their future is helped and shaped by a government that understands that a strong economy with good jobs in the future depends on maintaining our natural capital, on joining the fight against climate change in a way that encourages technological growth and new jobs that can help us develop our resources, develop our tech sector, develop housing, and develop communities around BC in partnership with communities, in partnership with First Nations, in partnership with British Columbian families, providing good jobs and providing a clean environment for their kids and grandkids. And with that, Honourable Speaker, I will take my place. I look forward to the continued debate.